Hello everyone, welcome to Easy IT, where we try to make things nice and easy for understanding, and currently we're focusing on Cisco networking. Let's make a simple network with one router, one switch, and one PC, and allow the router to be a DHCP server to hand out an IP address to the PC through the switch automatically. Currently, I'm using Cisco Packet Tracer version 8.2.1. And right now it's November 2024, for reference. First off, I'm going to click down here in the lower left on Network Devices and grab a 4331 version router and pull it up into the workspace. I'm also going to zoom in on it with the plus magnifying glass up here so we can see it nice and easily. Then I'm going to click Switches in the lower left down here. And I'm going to grab a 2960 switch and put it over here. Then I'll grab an end device from down here in the lower left corner and grab a PC and put it here. Again, our goal is to make the router a DHCP server through the switch to automatically give an IP address to the PC. Now, let's connect our cables. I'm going to click on the orange connections lightning bolt and click a copper straight through cable. I'm going to left click on the router and click Gigabit Ethernet 000. Now I have the cable in hand. I'm going to click the switch and choose the high level port, kind of like a trunk port setup. Now I'm going to click the copper straight through cable at the bottom again, click the switch, and I'm going to plug the PC into Fast Ethernet 01. And click the PC, and of course connect to the only Ethernet connection, Fast Ethernet 0. Switches are plug and play out of the box with VLAN 1. So therefore, there's going to be a green light here between the switch and the PC after a little bit of negotiation, but router ports are shut down by default. They have to be administratively enabled in order for them to be active. I'm going to start by clicking on the router and going to the CLI tab. And first off the bat, I'm going to answer no to the question, do you want to enter the initial configuration dialog? That's not necessary here for what we're doing. So I'm going to answer no here. And I'm going to hit enter to get started. Now, normally we would type enable to go into privileged exec mode, which means more commands. But I'm going to mistype this on purpose. I'm going to leave out the letter B and just type this. And I want you to see what this does. When I mistype a command on a network device, routers or switches, it tries to do an internet lookup because it thinks maybe I'm trying to look for some website name. But this is an offline simulation right here, and so it can't do it. It's going to take quite a while, and we're going to fix that with a command on the router to get rid of that function. Normally, you can do this, or you can access or ping websites through network devices, but here we're not going to do that, but we're going to fix this with the command no IP domain lookup as soon as this lookup attempt is done. And again, it takes a little while, but it'll be done in just a little bit. I'm going to wait for that to happen here. Just a little bit longer and it should stop. Oh, here we go. There we go. So around about 30 seconds or so. Let's now type enable to get into privileged exec mode. And that's denoted by the pound sign right after the word router. Now I'm going to go into configure terminal mode. Configure terminal. That allows us to configure the router and change its core settings. And you'll notice that my prompt changed to router config to let me know I'm in configure mode. Right off the bat, I want to type no IP domain dash lookup. This is the command that's going to stop it from doing a web search if it doesn't recognize a command like I showed you at the beginning. This is very handy. I try to do this every single time I'm doing simulations. Sometimes I forget. That's just the way humans are, right? But this time I'm remembering to do it, and it's very helpful in case I do a typo. I don't want to wait another 30 seconds for it to do a lookup. In Cisco, when it gives you no message after a command, that means you did the command correctly. Now we're also still in configure mode, so I'm going to change the host name of the router. I'm going to type host name capital R1. Enter. And you'll notice that my prompt now changes to R1. But any changes we make here are only in what's called the running configuration. The running configuration is like temporary. So if I lost power right now, or if I rebooted this router right now, I would lose my no IP domain lookup command, and I would lose the name change too. We'll fix that a little later with another command called copy running config to startup config. We'll do that at the end. From config mode, I'm now going to go to the interface gigabit 000 and configure that. So we type interface. I'm using the tab key to autocomplete. If you type enough letters and hit tab and it recognizes it, it'll complete the command for you. Interface, ooh, I did that wrong. Interface gigabit Ethernet, excuse me, human mistakes again, 0/0/0. Enter. Now you'll notice my prompt changes to config IF. That means I'm configuring this interface right up here. We're going to put an IP address on this. IP address 10.10.10.254 space. We need a subnet mask so it knows the rules of the network and how much the IP address is allowed to change. We're going to set the subnet mask to 255.255.255.0. That's also known as /24. I'm going to make a future video on subnetting at some point, if you want to stick around on my channel and find that later. Enter. Now remember, this interface is shut down administratively by default. That's to protect your network in case it's a real network. So we need to type the command no shutdown. In other words, turn off shutdown mode. Enter. Now you'll notice we have two messages. The one is the link changed. That's the connectivity. It changed to up. And this one is the ability of it to transfer data. Line protocol, up, down. It changed to up. So the connectivity is good. Copper is touching copper. Copper cable is touching copper connectors inside the physical port. And logically, it can pass zeros and ones with this message here. Good news. You'll see the light turn green on our simulator on the left. And now the switch light just turned green over here too. So it can actually talk. Enter. Now I don't want to be in configure interface mode anymore. I want to be in regular config mode. So I'm going to type the word exit to go back one stage or back one mode, exiting configure interface mode, and now going back to regular configure terminal mode. Now I'm going to create a pool of IP addresses that the router can hand out. That's done with IP, DHCP, pool, and I'm going to give it a friendly name in all caps. Let's say this is the accounting department, just for fun. Enter. Okay, now my prompt changed to DHCP config. So now I'm configuring the DHCP pool that I just triggered. I need to tell it what network to hand out. Network is the command. Space 10.10.10.0. That's a network IP with that subnet mask I listed up above right here. So 10.10.10.0 space, same subnet mask 255.255.255.0. That determines that they're the same. Enter. I want the PC to get a default gateway. It's not typed as default gateway here. It's instead typed as default -router. What is the default gateway for this PC? Well, it's going to be this IP right here that we applied to the gigabit Ethernet 000 port. So the default router I want the PC to get, so it knows where to go to get out of its own network, is 10.10.10.254. We don't need the subnet mask here. This will be good enough. In the real world, we usually need a DNS server. In this case, let's use Google to make it easy. Of course, we're offline in this simulation, but let's go ahead and type it in just so we can prove it. DNS-server is the command, and we'll use Google's main DNS server 8.8.8.8. Enter. Now, I don't want to be in DHCP config mode anymore because I'm done typing in and configuring a pool of IPs. So I need to type exit. Now I'm back in regular config mode. So I'm going to type addresses that I don't want the router to hand out. That's done with the command IP DHCP excluded -address. And let's say I don't want it to hand out the first 100 IPs. So let's type 10.10.10.1. That's the first usable IP in this network I've created, space, and now I'm going to give the high end number to exclude and not hand out. Let's do 10.10.10.100. So it's not going to hand out 10.1 through 10.100 to any PCs connected to it, or hosts, I should say. Enter. I want to exclude a couple more. IP DHCP excluded -address 10.10.10.253 space 10.10.10.254. The 10.10.10.254 is the address of this current port up here on the router. I'm also going to add an extra one just in case I want to add a management IP on the switch. I won't do that in this simulation, but maybe I'll do it in another video. Enter, and I'm going to exit configure mode because I'm done configuring the DHCP pool and the excluded addresses, back to regular enable mode. Now, I've made a lot of changes and they're in the running configuration. They're not in the saved to disk configuration, the startup config. In order to save your changes from the running configuration temporary mode, we need to type the following command. Copy running -config space startup -config. That saves my changes I've been typing to the disk of the device. Enter. It asks for the destination file name. Do you want it to be startup config or maybe a different one? Yeah, you can save different config files. In this case, though, I'm just going to hit enter to accept the default startup config name. Enter, and now it's good. Now, what did we do? If we scroll back a little bit, we went no IP domain lookup. That means, hey, Mr. Router, don't try to do crazy web address lookups if I make a typo. That's handy. Then we also said, hey, router, change your name to R1. He did. We noticed that. Then we set an IP address on the gigabit Ethernet 000. We set an IP and we turned off shutdown mode. And we saw messages proving that, hey, now I can talk to the other devices that are connected to me. Then we typed an IP DHCP pool accounting and we set the network, the default gateway for any computers that get an IP from this router, and the DNS server for name lookups on the internet. Then we exited back to regular config mode and typed in some exclusions, 10.10.10.1 through 10.10.10.100, and also 10.10.10.253 and 10.10.10.254. Then we typed in copy running config, startup config in order to save our changes to the memory of the router. We're done with the router. Now, switches by default use VLAN 1 out of the box, so we're not going to configure that in this video. We may do that in a different video where we start using VLANs, but not in this one. So I'm done with the router and I can close its CLI. Now, let's see if this PC gets an IP from the router. And do we know which one it should get? That's a good trick, right? That's a good question, isn't it? It's a tricky question. Let's click on the PC. I'm going to click on desktop and I'm going to go to the command prompt. Now, in order to make sure that I'm getting an IP, we type ipconfig. Now, currently, it's all zeros. We need to tell it to reach out and see if there's a DHCP server here. Is there a DHCP server on this little network? Yes, the router. We set it that way. So let's type in ipconfig space / renew, enter, wait a little bit, and there we go. There's our settings that we told the router to hand out. Start handing out 10.10.10.101 because I excluded 10.10.10.1 through 10.10.10.100. So this PC got the next one in line, 101. We told it give a default router, default gateway in Windows language, 10.10.10.254 and a DNS server of 8.8.8.8 for Google. Pretty easy, right? Let me know, leave any comments or questions if you need any further help. And I hope this was helpful for you to learn how to turn a router into a DHCP server. It's pretty cool. Give it a try. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.